How are we? Are we well? Was it a good break? Did we get food? Are we refreshed? Yes? Really? Let's try that again. Yes? There we go. Excellent. My name is Tejas. That's pronounced like contagious, and I make that very easy because I get a lot of, is your name Tejas? Is it Tejas? Is it, I get a lot of mispronunciations. Here's a way of making it easy. It is like contagious. Don't worry, I'm not sick. I'm not going to give you anything besides hopefully a good talk about JavaScript and its welcoming nature. Day to day, I work at a data science platform called Contiamo. And what we do is we build very rich, expressive user interfaces that interact with things like machine learning models and AI to enable our customers to make better decisions from their data, essentially build decision tools. I'm here today to talk to us about JavaScript. Especially do I need to do something? Especially how JavaScript as a language is helpful and welcoming and more hospitable and accommodating to newcomers across the board, from beginners to intermediates to more advanced engineers. I'd really like to get the slides fixed. It's throwing me off a bit. Let's see. Maybe, should I not touch anything? Right. Okay, the tech guys are on the way. I guess I can just continue talking. So, where were we? Today we're going to talk about JavaScript. The title of the talk is From You Can't to You Can, the welcoming nature of JavaScript. From you can't to you can, the welcoming nature of JavaScript. Have you ever felt like JavaScript has been described or in some ways dismissed or reduced as kind of a toy language? It's kind of it's a little bit brittle, it's a little bit shaky. Oh, we have slides. Excuse me, that's cool. Can we hear it for the... All right. Woo. Thank you, sir. So the title is called From You Can't to You Can, the welcoming nature of JavaScript, right? And so we want to talk about how JavaScript, through various language syntax features, is just something that is so approachable and hospitable. And then we'll talk a little bit about my experience. To make my point about JavaScript maybe being a language that some consider brittle and maybe not as robust, I'd like to share with you a quote from a friend of mine. This quote is, I think, a good summation of how we think about JavaScript. Seriously? There we go. This is a heavy paraphrase of what a friend of mine has said, and it's heavy because it was way worse, the original text, let me tell you. He's a Scala engineer and really talented, but fact of the matter is some of the more, I'd say, opinionated languages have this opinion about JavaScript. My goal today is to examine some points of criticism about JavaScript and say, hey, maybe that is not a bug, but maybe that's a feature. Do you understand? Are you with me? Maybe that's not a weakness, but maybe it's a strength. Maybe it's not a disadvantage, but an advantage. I want to talk to us particularly about 4 things. And then if we have some time at the end, I'd like to kind of share just a bit of my story and experience with JavaScript. With that, I'd like to, for 2 seconds, give us some context for those of us who maybe haven't heard. Talk 2 seconds about the history of JavaScript. So in the beginning, the web platform was really immature or just beginning, and the future of the web at the time, I think it was the 80s, I'm not even sure, was foreseen as something that would be powered by Java, right? Java applets and browsers would be Web 2.0. Wow, how cool would that be, right? And meanwhile, Netscape, Brendan Eich invented this language for the web platform that would be expressive and powerful and would really see the web forward. I read that this language took 3 weeks to come up with, and I've heard that it was a rushed delivery. Now, how many of us have written rush to delivery code? And I don't even need to say, I mean, we know what that's like, right? I think while some would say that part of JavaScript is maybe what makes it weak or unique, I would say that may have been one of the happiest accidents, if it was an accident, in the history of our time. And that's the reason I put this slide up there. Now, let's get to the 4 things. Number 1. I can already see some of the TypeScript people in the room judging me. But let me tell you, I think dynamic typing with JavaScript is, while criticized as something that is weak and that creates brittle applications, I have honestly not seen a more welcoming construct. Mainly because static typing, as it stands, is extra syntax, and there's a lot to keep track of. I mean, this is from feedback from friends of mine who were journalists, architects, graphic designers with not a lot of web dev or computer science experience, all of them wanting a change from the industry that they're studied, and guess which language they found their home in. I tell you what, it was not ReasonML or TypeScript. JavaScript, by its very nature of dynamic typing, was the language of choice. I believe this is the reason. I believe through the dynamic nature of the language, what you get is the ability to go from 0 to, oh my gosh, it's working, in a fraction of the time it would normally take. I would also say that dynamic typing is educational. Absolutely educational. And what I mean by that is it teaches you the need for static typing. Right? How many of you have been bitten by implicit coercion, or you try and do a computation and you get a nan, or the various types of errors that can occur with JavaScript's implicit coercion because of its dynamic type system? I would say what happens then is something really cool and something I believe is unique to the JavaScript community. You see, JavaScript as a syntax, I would say, is really, really, really friendly for the reasons we'll discuss, but I would say that's 2 sides of the same coin. The other side being the helpful, supportive, inclusive community that I'm looking at right now. If someone's bitten by a typing error in JavaScript or just a computation that's impossible, what's the next step? You turn to Stack Overflow or GitHub or something, or Discord, and you find a community that says, oh, well, that's because you're changing this thing and whatever the cause may be. And you learn. I grew up in a school setting where information was ingested and then regurgitated practically and professionally. So you learn things and then you just do it in your job. That's just the way it's always been. That's what we've learned. Whereas I would argue when you've been bitten by a few dynamic type problems, you actually learn the need and the importance of it, and then use it wisely. Number 2. This is a quote that should not have happened. We'll talk about that in a second. Number 2. This is an excerpt from Crockford.com by the author of the book called JavaScript, The Good Parts, Douglas Crockford. He is, I would say, one of the greatest contributors to the JavaScript community. I mean, he used to work for Yahoo and created a UI kit and all kinds of goodies. And this is what he says about JavaScript's APIs from the browser and from Node. He says, JavaScript is also coupled with the DOM, a horrendous API. This was before Node.js. There's a lot of confusion about where JavaScript ends and the DOM begins. And while I would agree with the second part, I would say, actually, I don't see why the DOM particularly is a horrendous API. In fact, the DOM, I would say, is the reason I have a job. The DOM is the reason for many of our careers here, especially if you work with like React or Vue or something. We have a React fan, Vue fan. We have a UI fan. I would argue APIs, at least for me and other engineers who have started, have been just these building blocks, right, from which you can show a pop-up or a modal dialog or a accept user input using window.prompt. You can fetch data using the fetch API. It's declared. It's kind of like there was a talk at JSConf with declarative CSS, where display flex is a declarative algorithm. The APIs, I would say, give you this tool set in the browser and in Node that gets you up and running really fast. It's part of the welcoming nature of JavaScript. I will admit, for me as a junior engineer, I tried to use window and Node, and it, of course, gave me an error, and I was like, wait, what? Window is not kind of just a function you can, or an object you can use in JavaScript? I confused it for syntax, absolutely. But that, again, was where the community shone, and I learned, and I was able to learn. In fact, I've spent a lot of time talking about APIs, and really, this talk is largely community-based. It's not very technical. But I thought, since I'm talking about APIs so much, I might as well use one. And so I wanted to build something, right? And so what I ended up doing was thinking about what can I build. And I thought about, I really like talking, in case you can't tell. And I really like people. And I don't want to have to hide behind this podium here and change my slides or use a clicker. And so I just thought I could build something that as I'm talking, it would follow me through my slides. And that's basically what's been happening this whole time. Hello. My name. It's just, the JavaScript ecosystem is so rich with these APIs. So I built this thing, I put it on GitHub, it's called Praise. And it's open source, it's very experimental. Please do not use it in production. It's only supported in Chrome, but it's literally just to make a point, and that point is JavaScript is welcoming. Praise was the praise. Right, see, it's experimental. Anyway, that's the project. And so I would say APIs, a lot. How long did this take? I sat next to my girlfriend, this beautiful young lady here. Took me 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon. And I was at it, so I even made React bindings for it, because why not? All of that's on GitHub. Number 3, JavaScript. I've been heard JavaScript criticized as a unopinionated language. You can kind of just write whatever style of code you want, and that's the language. You can write class-based, object-oriented, polymorphic, inheritance-style code, or you could write stateless, functional, immutable code with monads flying around that looks like math, and there's no real, it doesn't push you into a style. I've heard this from Golang engineers, right, who, if you've looked at Go code, it's really just, it looks very homogeneous. But I would actually say, if you take a peek under the hood of JavaScript, what you'll find is that is in fact opinionated. I've written class-based, object-oriented, polymorphic, inheritance-style code, and there's a use case for that, absolutely. But under the hood, what you end up getting is functions and objects and things that use prototype delegation. And so this would lead me to think JavaScript is kind of sort of leading towards more of a functional language. You get first-class functions. You get recursion out of the box. There's a star there because I know, not everything is an object or a function, but you catch my drift. And then in a team, you can kind of conventionalize the other functional best practices. You can have pure functions. You can have immutable data structures. On and on and on I could go. I would say JavaScript is easier this way. When I tried writing code kind of Java style, what ended up happening was I felt like I was going up an escalator that was moving down. You tracking with me? It felt almost like I was fighting the language. And when I used the language, the way I would say it was designed, things got a lot easier. The last thing I'll say is really, it was a point of controversy for a little bit last year. I'm not going to say much about it because in my opinion, it is incredible. It is the greatest mechanic a compiler can have, I guarantee you. Lastly, we'll talk about, my slides don't change. See, it's experimental, don't use it in production. Lastly, we'll talk about this. Automatic semicolon insertion is such a blessing for beginning developers. Honest to goodness, have you ever worked in another language, left off a semicolon, and what happened? The compiler yells at you. And you're like, man, why? Am I not allowed to make a mistake? Yet JavaScript, if it's someone just learning, what does it do? It just says, I see what you're trying to do. I got you. If there's one thing you get from this talk, let it be that JavaScript is your bro. Or cis, I don't know. Or whatever, we're gender neutral. And so those are the 4 things that I think really help JavaScript be this language that is so easy to adopt across the board. About ASI, I'll say one more thing. As I've learned and grown into a more seasoned engineer, I would recommend leave your semicolons on. Honestly, it's good as a starting out step to maybe have them optional, but what you're doing is you're fighting the compiler under the hood by not having them. Now that that's out the way, let's shift gears a little bit, and I'd like to talk briefly about my journey with JavaScript, because you see, in many ways, it is the journey of from you can't to you can. I was born with a disability. I was born with a disease. As I said in the beginning, I'm not contagious, don't worry, but it's still a disease, and it is life-threatening, and I've been told I have the worst kind of it. Basically, the condition is called hemophilia. Do not confuse that with homophobia. But hemophilia is a disease where once I start bleeding, I do not stop until I lose all my blood and die. And so, I can see some of you engineers in the room go like, well, then just don't get cut. Problem solved, dude. It's not rocket science. But let me tell you, internal bleeding is something that is far more common than external bleeding. And so if you've walked today, if you came with a backpack, I guarantee you have started bleeding at some point into your knees or into your ankles or into your elbows, but you stop, so you don't even notice. I've been in the emergency room literally by opening a heavy door. By climbing stairs. I've literally spent weeks in the emergency room. And so this, you can see by this how you can get a lot of you can'ts. Am I right? You can't play sports. You can't ride a bicycle. I have a bicycle. To this day, I have no idea what to do with it. It just sits there. I should probably sell it. Who wants to buy a bike? Anyway, you want it, really? We'll talk after. So there's a lot of you can'ts, and that started to change when my brother, who's healthy, he went to a HTML class. And when I was 8 years old, he came home and he showed me. He was like, look what I learned. And he wasn't as interested, but I was like, are you kidding me? I can make a UI? What? And I was so interested. And so what ended up happening was, he would go to school, my parents would go to work, and I would be alone at home all day, air day, most of the year. In an entire school year, I would attend 19 days of school. The rest of the time, I'm alone at home. Doing what? Well, there's so many games you can play, and cartoons you can watch, and candy you can eat until you get bored. And when you're bored, I've learned you do what interests you. And for me, this was code. And so I started writing some code and made a couple of websites as a child, and I was in magazines. If there's a child making websites in a small town, people here. I was in a few magazines, and then my parents, God bless them, they did the best thing they knew to do. They put me in an advanced program for object-oriented C++ at age 10. At age 10, I still have the diploma, and I'm like, I don't remember any of it, right? As a 10-year-old, I'm sitting there with all kinds of includes at the top of the file. Hash include conio.h or something like this. And I'm like, cone? Is there ice cream involved in this program? I honestly had no idea. The compiler would yell at me for literally everything. And as a 10-year-old, I'm sitting there and I'm going, why is it yelling at me? I'm writing code. Is this another thing I can't do? I thought programming was my thing. This was the one, people have applauded me. I've been, you can't, and now I thought I could. Eventually, I got back into JavaScript as it evolved, and things like Prototype and Scriptaculous came on the scene, and then MooTools and jQuery and things started picking up some traction. Eventually won an award for web development in my hometown, and not long after, a job came, and another job, and I'm interviewing all of a sudden for a position in Germany, move here, and now, let me tell you, I have access to the best healthcare I have ever received. I go running, I lift weights, I've climbed mountains, I go rafting in river. It's insane. And all of a sudden, most of the you can'ts have become the you can, largely because, thank you, yeah, you can go for it. Largely because of the welcoming nature of JavaScript. Let me tell you, we have a language that is inclusive, that is tolerant, that will not entangle your mind with intersection types and discriminated unions and generics. And while these are good things, I think there's a time and a place. We have a language that is inclusive, that is easy. The other side of the coin, we have a community. Can we hear it for the community? We have a community. Man, is it inclusive. I mean, look around you. This looks like the United Nations here, right? We have a community that is inclusive, that is tolerant, that is mostly vegan. I'll leave you with this. I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. I've thoroughly enjoyed working even with the organizers of this conference to make it a wonderful time. Or they've given me a wonderful time more than I haven't even organized anything. Don't get me wrong. But I will leave you with this. I think we have the potential to make the language what it is. How many of you have heard the TC39 talk? Right, exactly. TC39 shapes the language, and it is an open standard, it is an open source project with proposals. Contribute, get involved. You have the power to make the language what you want it to be. If you don't want to code, you have the power to make the community what it is. You have the power. I leave up the slide for praise, and if any of you are interested, it should change. If it doesn't change, whatever. But thank you very much. That's my talk.